The courtroom was uncomfortably quiet, save for the occasional shuffle of papers and the ticking of the oversized wall clock. I stood in the defendant's box, wearing a simple navy blue suit, not handcuffs, not orange. But you'd never guess that by the way the officers near the gallery were snickering. They didn't bother to hide it. 3 uniformed deputies leaned back in their seats, whispering and chuckling, eyes trained on me like I was some kind of joke. One even leaned over to the other and muttered, "Who let him in dressed like that?" Another one added, "Bet he's gonna ask for a selfie with the judge." I could hear it all. I could feel it. The judge was late, again, which only gave them more time to enjoy themselves. I kept my hands folded in front of me, my posture calm, composed. I wasn't here to perform. I wasn't here to explain myself to anyone. The prosecutor, a sharp-jawed man with silver hair, flipped through his file, barely glancing up. He didn't know yet either. None of them did. Because as far as they were concerned, I was just another man standing trial in a city that didn't know me. And to be fair, I hadn't exactly introduced myself, yet. But they'd know soon. Very soon. As the minutes dragged on, the laughter quieted, but the smirks remained. The bailiff walked by and gave me a once-over like I was out of place. Not in a hostile way, just dismissive, like I didn't belong in a courtroom unless I was on trial. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't ask why I wasn't cuffed. He just nodded at the prosecutor and walked off. One of the officers leaned back with his arms crossed. "Bet he's gonna plead for leniency," he mumbled just loud enough for me to hear. "He's got that look. All nerves and no spine." I looked directly at him. Didn't blink. Didn't flinch. That made him squirm a little. Just a little. The truth was, I wasn't nervous. I was waiting. The judge finally walked in, older and tired-looking, with reading glasses perched low on his nose. He sat down, glanced at me, then looked around the room. "We ready?" he asked. The prosecutor stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Though I'm not sure what this is about. The individual standing before us hasn't been properly identified. There's no case on file. No charges." The judge looked confused. "Then why is he standing in my courtroom?" That's when I cleared my throat. "Your Honor," I said calmly. "If I may clarify, my name is Langston Reeve. I requested this appearance personally." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly are you, Mr. Reeve?" I turned and faced the room fully. That was the moment everything changed. The air in the room shifted. The quiet murmuring stopped. I took a slow step forward, keeping my voice steady but commanding. "I'm not here as a defendant, Your Honor. I'm here under authority." The prosecutor frowned. "Authority from whom?" I pulled a slim leather case from my inner jacket pocket and opened it. The gold badge inside caught the courtroom lights instantly. The seal was unmistakable. I held it up, then passed it to the bailiff, who walked it over to the judge. The judge blinked and adjusted his glasses. His lips parted slightly, and then his expression dropped, eyes wide, spine stiffening. This can't be right," he muttered. I nodded once. "It's correct." He looked again at the ID. Langston Reeve. Newly appointed Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. The officers who had been laughing were no longer relaxed. 2 of them straightened their posture so fast it looked like a drill. The third one sank slightly in his seat. I turned and looked directly at them now, not with anger, not with smugness. Just clarity. "I requested this appearance today," I said, "to observe, unannounced, how justice operates at its most casual level. To see how respect, or lack of it, is distributed when credentials are unknown." The judge set the badge down gently, like it was suddenly too heavy. The prosecutor's mouth was slightly open, but no words came out. I continued, and it didn't take long to find my answer. You could hear a pin drop. The officers who had mocked me minutes ago were staring at the floor now, faces pale, jaws tight. One of them looked like he wanted to melt into the bench. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The way I was treated before my identity was known, I said evenly, is precisely what concerns me. The assumption, the mockery, the casual disrespect, this wasn't a mistake. It's a pattern. One I've seen too many times, and one that ends today. The judge cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. Director Reeve. I apologize for the confusion. I looked at him. This wasn't about confusion, Your Honor. It was about exposure. And now that it's happened, we're going to address it. I turned back to the courtroom. Every courtroom officer present today will be the subject of an internal inquiry, not because of how they treated me, but because it's clear how they likely treat others. Individuals who don't have a badge. Who don't carry a title. Who walk into this room expecting fairness and get anything but. The prosecutor finally found his voice. Sir, if I may, had we known, I cut in, calm but firm. But you didn't know. And that's exactly the point. He sank back into silence. I took a final look at the room, the wooden benches, the seal on the wall, the silent faces. The illusion of control was gone now. Now, the reality had arrived. I stepped back from the center of the courtroom. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed wrong. This wasn't a sting. It wasn't a performance, I continued. It was a mirror. And I need this room, and every room like it, to take a long look at what it just saw. The judge was still clutching my credentials in both hands like he didn't know what to do with them. Director Reeve, I assure you, this is highly irregular. If there was misconduct, there was, I interrupted, gently but without apology. And irregularity is exactly why I'm here. Because this, I motioned around the courtroom, isn't some sealed institution immune from oversight. It's a public trust. And that trust was broken before I even said a word. I turned to the bailiff. Take the names of every officer present. I want a full report submitted to my office within 48 hours. Yes, sir, the bailiff said quickly, already pulling out a notepad. As he moved, I could see the ripple of anxiety pass through the three officers who had laughed earlier. One looked like he wanted to speak, maybe even apologize, but the moment had passed. The silence between us said more than any words ever could. To the prosecutor, I added, you might want to review how often your cases rely on assumptions and appearances. It's a pattern. It ends now. He gave a small, embarrassed nod, unable to meet my eyes. Finally, I looked at the judge. I don't want ceremony. I want accountability. The judge gave a solemn nod. Understood, Director. I started walking out. No handcuffs. No questions. Only the sound of quiet realization settling over the room like dust. As I stepped through the heavy courtroom doors, they shut behind me with a sound that felt like finality. Not just for me, but for the way things had been operating in that room for far too long. Outside, the corridor was lined with marble and silence. My assistant, Agent Tamsin Rowe, stood waiting just past the security checkpoint. She handed me a file without a word. We'd planned this carefully. All three officers, she asked under her breath. I nodded. Laughing before they knew who I was. Same pattern, she murmured. Exactly. I flipped open the folder, photos, transcripts, complaints. Dozens of them. All unrelated cases. All the same faces. All swept aside. Until today. We began walking toward the exit. They'll investigate now, she said. They'll have no choice, I replied. The farther we got from the courtroom, the more I felt the weight shift from my shoulders to theirs. I wasn't there to punish. I was there to remind. That not every suit is powerless. That not every quiet man is without reach. And that sometimes the system gets watched, from the inside out. We stepped outside into the daylight. A press van sat parked across the street, oblivious to what had just happened behind those courthouse walls. But it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Not now. Not with what was coming next. By the time I returned to my office at the Hoover Building, the first internal emails had already gone out. Agent Rowe moved efficiently, forwarding footage from the courtroom security feed to our internal affairs unit. She didn't ask for approval, she didn't need to. We'd built this plan knowing exactly what we were walking into. What about the press? She asked. Let them wait, I said. The truth will do more damage than any headline. Still, I knew it was only a matter of time. Word travels fast, especially when people realize the person they mocked now holds the authority to audit every breath they take in uniform. Across the street from our building, someone snapped a photo of me as I stepped from the black SUV and entered the federal complex. It would be the first image they'd see in tomorrow's headlines, me, no smile, no security detail, just walking tall in that same suit. By nightfall, agents across the country were talking. Some out of surprise. Others out of respect. And somewhere, in a small city courthouse, 3 officers were probably reviewing their careers in silence. Not because they got caught. But because the man they misjudged was no longer beneath them. He was above their clearance level. The following morning, a quiet storm rolled through the system. Internal Affairs launched formal inquiries, not just in that courtroom, but in other locations where similar complaints had been filed and ignored. My office didn't send warnings. We sent auditors. One of the officers from the courtroom, a tall one with the nervous smirk, tried to contact my office through back channels. Not to apologize, just to explain. But I didn't take the call. This wasn't personal. It was institutional. For decades, people like him had laughed when they thought no one was watching. When they assumed the man standing alone in a courtroom couldn't possibly have influence. When they believed dignity was earned only by titles they could recognize. But now, the man they underestimated was rewriting the rules from the top down. My office released a quiet directive later that week. It was just a memo, internal use only. It read, every courtroom, every badge, every bench, subject to audit. If your respect depends on someone's rank, you're not fit to wear the uniform. This bureau does not operate on assumption. It operates on accountability. I didn't sign my name at the bottom. I didn't have to. They all knew exactly who wrote it. Within 72 hours, the ripple turned into a wave. Several officers, some from the courtroom, others connected through old complaints, were quietly placed on administrative review. No media circus. No headlines. Just quiet visits from internal agents, interviews, and sealed reports. The courtroom judge, to his credit, issued a written acknowledgement. Not quite an apology, but a recognition that moments of oversight, no matter how brief, reflect deeper responsibilities. It was more than I expected, but less than what was due to the countless people who walked through his courtroom with no badge to shield them. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from the noise. I had no interest in making a spectacle of what happened. This was never about vengeance. It was about precedent. In the days that followed, I received dozens of letters, some from other judges, some from officers, some anonymous. One stood out. It came from a public defender in that same courthouse, Director Reeve. I've worked here for 11 years. I watched your visit. I saw what changed the second your badge was revealed. And for once, it wasn't one of my clients being humiliated. Thank you for letting them show who they really are. Now maybe they'll think twice. Palmer, that was enough. That was why I did it. And it wouldn't be the last courtroom I visited. Weeks passed. But the aftershocks didn't fade. Courtrooms across the country started noticing subtle changes, officers sitting straighter, speaking with more care, bailiffs watching their tone, judges choosing their words more precisely. Not because they feared exposure, but because they finally knew someone was watching. Someone they couldn't profile, belittle, or dismiss. I never issued a public statement. I didn't need a press conference or a front-page story. The message was already embedded in every courtroom conversation that started with, "Let's not end up like that FBI case." Inside the bureau, I quietly assembled a team, agents with legal backgrounds, experience in civil rights law, and zero tolerance for courtroom theatrics. Their mission was simple: visit, observe, report. No warning. No announcement. We called it Operation Mirror. It wasn't about catching people in the act. It was about showing them the act was over. In one meeting, a senior official asked me, "Do you really think walking into a courtroom without a title visible is going to change things?" I answered, "No." But walking out with the title revealed already did. And that was the truth. I hadn't just exposed bad behavior. I'd reminded them of a truth they forgot: respect isn't earned through fear. It's lost through assumption. Months later, the courtroom where it all started had changed. The officers who once laughed weren't there anymore, transferred, reassigned, or quietly let go. The bailiff had been retrained. The judge now opened every session with a firm reminder: this courtroom does not judge by appearance. Only by law. I never returned to that courthouse. I didn't need to. Because the change wasn't in the walls, it was in the weight of what had happened there. Every officer who heard the story passed it on, not as gossip, but as warning. The man they mocked. He was listening before they even knew his name. In the bureau, Operation Mirror expanded. Reports came in daily. Some were clean. Others, less so. But what mattered was this: those who had once operated in shadows now understood something fundamental: no one is invisible anymore. Not the defendants. Not the bystanders. And definitely not the quiet man in the suit, watching from the back row. I never raised my voice. I didn't need to. All I did was stand there and let them speak first. And when they did, they told me everything I needed to know.